Every day, we are making new friends on social media platforms. We chat with them, share our interests, and sometimes even meet them in person. But do we really know who they are? Behind the screen, there could be someone who is hiding their true identity, their dark intentions, and their violent past. Someone who is looking for a victim to prey on, to manipulate, to harm, or even to kill. This is the dark side of online dating, and today we delved into the horrific fate of Grace Millane. Meet Grace Emmy Rose Millane, a young woman born in Essex, England in 1996. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, with 2 older brothers named Michael and Declan. Grace was a sociable and lively person with a passion for all things creative and artistic. Her family was her world, and she loved spending time with them. After attending the University of Lincoln, Grace graduated with a degree in advertising and marketing. She was excited for a new adventure and had saved up for a year-long backpacking tour after her graduation. But before she embarked on her journey, she did something truly selfless. Grace cut off her long hair and donated it to the Little Princess Trust, which makes wigs for children with cancer. In October 2018, Grace set off on her travels, starting in Peru before spending 6 weeks in South America. She met other travelers along the way and was eager to share her journey with everyone back home. On November 19, 2018, Grace arrived in New Zealand alone, ready for her next adventure. On December 1, 2018, she left her hostel and headed out into the city center of Auckland, dressed in a stunning knee-length black dress and white shoes, carrying a small handbag. She had made plans to meet someone she had matched with on Tinder, and although she was initially unsure about meeting up, she eventually agreed to get some drinks with him. Grace and her date met at Sky City, an entertainment complex with bars, restaurants, and a casino. She had been sending messages to her friend Amina back home, saying, "I click with him so well." As the night unfolded, Grace and the enigmatic oil manager found themselves at a place called the Bluestone Room. The atmosphere was electric, and laughter filled the air. However, something peculiar happened when Grace momentarily left the table. For reasons unknown, the mysterious man decided to delve into her handbag, searching for who knows what. But as the clock struck 9:30 p.m., the duo bid farewell to the bar, their arms holding at each other, and ventured down the dimly lit streets. Little did anyone know that this would be the last time Grace would be seen. The following day, which happened to be Grace's 22nd birthday, her family and friends eagerly reached out to her, showering her with messages and love on social media. However, to their dismay, Grace remained silent. Her phones went unanswered, and her absence was deeply unsettling. Grace's brother, Declan, grew increasingly worried. He revealed that Grace had been enthusiastically sharing every detail and photo of her trip thus far, making her sudden silence on her birthday all the more alarming. A sense of unease settled upon her loved ones, for Grace was a true homebody, and this deviation from her usual behavior raised a red flag. Without wasting any time, her concerned parents contacted the Auckland police, reporting their beloved daughter as missing. The authorities swiftly reached out to the hostel where Grace had been staying, only to discover that she had not returned on the night of December 1st. Initially, the police didn't suspect foul play, as most of Grace's belongings remained at the hostel. Perhaps she had simply decided to spend the night with newfound friends and had forgotten to inform anyone. Fortunately, the city's extensive network of CCTV cameras proved to be a valuable asset for the investigation. It didn't take long for them to identify the mysterious man who had been seen with Grace on that fateful Saturday evening. As fate would have it, the very night Grace vanished, she had changed her profile picture on Facebook. Beneath the photo, a comment caught the attention of the authorities. It simply read, "Beautiful, very radiant." The person behind this comment was none other than Jesse Kempson. But who was Jesse Kempson? Jesse Kempson, a 26-year-old Wellington native with a life that could rival the most gripping of novels. From a young age, Jesse's world was constantly in flux as his parents' separation led to multiple moves and a fractured family dynamic. Raised in part by his grandparents, he found himself estranged from many relatives, creating a void that he desperately sought to fill. But Jesse had a secret, one that would come to define him in the eyes of those who knew him best. He was a pathological liar, weaving intricate tales that ranged from being the cousin of a famous All Blacks rugby player to battling a terminal illness. His lies knew no bounds, infiltrating every aspect of his life. Employers, landlords, partners, and even his own family and friends fell victim to Jesse's web of deceit. Time and time again, his fabricated world would crumble, leaving him evicted from his flats and jobless. One former landlord, still reeling from the experience, recounted how Jesse had spun a tale of being a professional softball player, even going so far as to claim a spot on New Zealand's national team, the Black Sox. But when the landlord grew suspicious after weeks of empty promises, he reached out to the Black Sox management, and Jesse's lies were laid bare for all to see. Even in his personal life, Jesse couldn't escape the consequences of his compulsive lying. He once convinced a landlord at the City Life Hotel that he held a prestigious managerial position at Woolworths, all while his rent was being paid by state benefits. And it seemed that no job was safe from his deceitful ways, as his last venture into telephone sales ended abruptly with a dismissal, all due to his inability to tell the truth. And to make matters worse, this all went down on the exact same day he crossed paths with the lovely Grace Millane, which the very last time Grace was seen with. On December 1st, Jesse found himself at the center of a mysterious disappearance. He was the last person seen with Grace that night, and the police knew he held the key to filling in the gaps. Just 4 days later, Jesse was called to the police station for what seemed like routine questioning.
Tell us about Grace.
So I was talking to Grace on Tinder.
Yeah.
We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday. And then we met at Sky City. And then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar, which is on the first floor.
Whose idea was it to go to that particular burger place?
Me. Because I didn't initially know that she was real.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of... So have you heard of catfish?
No.
So catfishing is where someone uses your profile, or uses your photos and pretends to be you and then meets, and you're a completely different person.
The detective, with a sense of urgency, asks if he would be willing to provide a voluntary DNA sample. Jesse, confident in his innocence, agrees without hesitation. The detective explains that they are still unsure of what exactly has happened to Grace. It is possible that she has been the victim of foul play, perhaps even murder. Jesse nods, understanding the gravity of the situation. The detective emphasizes that they cannot confirm if Grace is alive or deceased at this point. However, they need to explore all possibilities, including the chance that Jesse may have unknowingly played a role in her disappearance. After a while waiting, Jesse stood up and asks the police,
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Have I been arrested for something I didn't do?
You haven't been arrested, mate.
Oh.
No.
I was like, holy shit.
As the investigation unfolds, more details emerge. Jesse recounts his last encounter with Grace, a seemingly ordinary date that ended with a hug, a kiss on the cheek, and plans for the next day. However, their communication abruptly ceases when Grace unmatched him on Tinder. But the detective's confusion grows as he realizes that their account of parting ways on the street contradicts the CCTV footage, which shows them entering the City Life Hotel together, arm in arm. The detectives diligently sift through hours of CCTV footage, determined to uncover the truth. They discover that Jesse left the hotel the next morning, but Grace was never seen leaving, adding an eerie layer to the mystery. He started his day by going shopping. He had purchased a suitcase, grabbed some cleaning supplies, and then hopped in a taxi to rent a red Toyota Corolla. Later on, he met up with a woman he had matched with on Tinder, but things quickly took a dark turn. She reported that he spoke about burying bodies and his police officer friends, leaving her feeling uneasy and declining his offer to drive her home. Undeterred, he headed out to rent a carpet cleaning machine, claiming he had some pesky red wine stains to tackle. As the day wore on, he loaded up 2 suitcases into the red Toyota, and the very next day, he was caught on camera buying a shovel. 2 hours later, he was seen power washing the car before returning it to the rental company. On the day Grace Millane was reported missing, he was spotted visiting various locations and dumping items in bins. When police arrived at his hotel, he tried to make a quick getaway but was apprehended and brought in for questioning. Despite his denials, the police began a thorough search of his hotel room. It was a Saturday night, December 7th, and David, Grace's father, had just arrived in Auckland. He stood before a crowd, his voice shaking with emotion, and made a plea for help.
Thank you for coming today. As you know, Grace has been missing for several days. We last had contact with her on Saturday the 1st of December, and as a family we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-orientated daughter. Grace has never been out of contact for this amount of time. She's usually in daily contact with either her mother, myself, her 2 brothers, members of the family on social media.
The investigation was moving quickly, and the police had already spoken to a person of interest. As time ticked by, people became more and more fearful, and the police stated that they had grave concerns for Grace's safety. It was a heart-wrenching situation, and the community was rallying together to help find Grace. Everyone was hoping and praying for her safe return, and David's emotional plea had touched the hearts of many. The search for Grace continued, and the family held on to hope that they would soon be reunited with their beloved daughter. On December 8th, the truth finally caught up with Jesse. He was taken into custody and questioned again, but this time his story had changed drastically. The authorities were determined to get to the bottom of what had happened to Grace Millane, and Jesse was their prime suspect. After some initial hesitation, Jesse agreed to speak to the investigators. Jesse claimed that he had been in shock when he discovered Grace's lifeless body the next morning. He had panicked and put her body in a suitcase, then driven out to bury her. He denied any guilt, but the investigators were skeptical. As they pressed him for more details, Jesse's story began to unravel. He couldn't explain why he had gone back to bed after discovering Grace's body, or why he hadn't looked for her when he exited the shower. The investigators knew that they had their man. And finally, they asked Jesse the question that had been on everyone's mind.
Did you kill Grace Millane? Okay. Jesse Kempson, you're under arrest for the murder of Grace Millane.
The investigators arrested Jesse on the spot, and he was taken away to face justice for his heinous crime. It was a tragic end to a young woman's life, but at least her killer had been brought to justice. The forensic search of Jesse's room uncovered even more disturbing evidence, despite Jesse's attempts to clean up the blood-soaked hotel room. But the police were quick to act on the information Jesse had given them, and soon they were scouring the area near the Waitakere Reservoir. And then, just after 4 p.m. that day, they found a body. It was identified as a location of interest, and after some intensive investigative work, they were able to confirm that it was Grace. The nation was in mourning as thousands of people paid tribute to Grace, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short. It was a painful moment for everyone involved in the search, and the grief was palpable. Even the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, publicly apologized to Grace's parents and offered her full support.
On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that. I've advised the family through the police that if there is anything we can do to assist, we are here to help with that.
The man responsible for Grace's death, Jesse Kempson, was charged with her murder just 5 days after she was reported missing. He appeared in court in Auckland, where he was granted interim name suppression to ensure a fair trial. Following an autopsy, it was confirmed that Grace had been strangled and had bruises on her arms and chest consistent with being pinned down. The pressure on her neck must have lasted between 4 and 5 minutes to be enough to kill her. As if that wasn't enough, Jesse carried out a number of disturbing internet searches as Grace lay dead in his room. He looked up hottest fire, flesh-eating birds, and Waitakere Rangers, the location where he would later try to bury Grace's body. And the more sinister was when he then took several intimate photos of Grace's dead body. It's hard to comprehend the evil that exists in this world, and Grace's loss had an impact on those around her. Just over a month after she was found, hundreds of people turned out for her funeral at Brentwood Cathedral in Essex. Detective Inspector Scott Beard, the dedicated investigator overseeing the case, swiftly flew to England to offer his condolences and support to the grieving Millane family. It had been a mere 6 days since the funeral of their beloved daughter, Grace. Jesse, the accused, made his appearance in the High Court, pleading not guilty to the charges against him. The trial commenced in November, promising to be a spectacle that would captivate the nation. Lasting a mere 3 weeks, it was a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. Throughout the proceedings, Jesse maintained a stoic facade, seemingly devoid of any remorse. His eyes occasionally flickered towards the court papers or buried his face in his hands, perhaps attempting to shield himself from the mounting evidence against him. The defense team, in a desperate attempt to salvage Jesse's reputation, argued that Grace's tragic demise was the result of a consensual yet ill-fated encounter. They claimed that Grace had engaged in similar sexual encounters prior to meeting Jesse, and this time, it had tragically ended in a misadventure. According to their narrative, Jesse had panicked upon realizing the accidental loss of Grace's life and had attempted to conceal her body. They vehemently insisted that this was not a murder but an unfortunate accident, a point they still adamantly maintained. However, the prosecution was armed with an overwhelming amount of compelling evidence and credible witnesses. They vehemently refuted the defense's claims, asserting that Jesse's actions were far from panicked. Instead, they argued that his actions were deliberate and intentional, painting a chilling picture of a cold-blooded killer. They accused Jesse of callously covering his tracks, weaving a web of lies and deceit to evade justice. Their argument was clear. Jesse had mercilessly suffocated and strangled Grace, leaving her unconscious for a horrifying 5 to 10 minutes. The defendant, Jesse Kempson, was found guilty of the murder of Grace Millane, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. The verdict of guilty will be welcomed by every member of the Millane family and friends of Grace, but it won't reduce the pain and suffering that they've had to endure over the past year. Grace was taken away from them in the most brutal fashion, and their lives have been ripped apart. Jesse's stepbrother claimed that he lied about pointless things all the time, until the point where he's got no out, and then he breaks down, cries, and runs away. But the story didn't end there. Jesse faced not one, but 2 more trials the following year. These trials were judged alone, with no jury present. 2 brave women had come forward to the police, recognizing Jesse from the blurred images after his arrest for Grace's murder. They had their own horrific stories to tell, shedding light on the true nature of Jesse. In the first trial, held in October 2020, an ex-partner spoke of the unimaginable physical, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse she had endured while with him. Jesse had held knives to her throat, choked her, forced her into degrading acts, and even drained her bank account of a staggering $10,000. The verdict was clear. Jesse was found guilty of 8 charges and sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. In November 2020, Jesse was put on trial once again, this time for the rape of a young British tourist he had met on Tinder, 8 months before Grace's murder. He had forced himself upon her, threatening to kill her and her family if she didn't comply. The verdict was swift and just. Guilty. Jesse received another 3.5 years in jail for this heinous crime, bringing the total to an additional 11 years, to be served concurrently with his sentence for Grace's murder. When Justice Jeffrey Viening pronounced Jesse guilty of rape, it triggered an aggressive outburst from him. He vehemently denied any wrongdoing, claiming there was no reason to convict him.
You have no reason to convict me, you're full of.
Sadly, in November 2020, Grace's father, David Millane, passed away after a courageous battle with cancer. This tragedy added another layer of heartbreak to an already devastating story. In December 2020, the veil of secrecy surrounding Jesse's identity was finally lifted when the Supreme Court denied his last-ditch appeal against his sentence for Grace's murder. While it's alleged that Jesse is currently working on appeals for both of his 2020 trials, Grace's family have been busy honoring her memory in a truly inspiring way. In an effort to combat male violence against women, Grace's family and friends raised a staggering amount of money for the White Ribbon Campaign. This incredible charity works to engage men and boys in the fight against violence, challenging harmful behaviors and standing up for women everywhere. In Grace's name, they raised over £11,000. But that's not all. The Love Grace campaign was also established in honor of this remarkable young woman. This campaign encourages people to donate handbags filled with essential items to help support women seeking refuge from abusive relationships. It's a beautiful way to honor Grace's memory and make a real difference in the lives of those who need it most. Despite the tragedy of Grace's untimely death, her legacy lives on through the incredible work of those who loved her. It's a testament to her spirit and the impact she had on those around her. That's all for today. Please let me know what you think about this tragic case in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.